Welcome to The Explainer. There's this deeply held belief in the business world, and honestly, it's pretty brutal but completely true. You don't need a year to get to know someone. One stressful moment tells you absolutely everything. Whether you're a founder watching an enterprise tech proof of concept completely crash and burn in front of your biggest potential client, or you're just navigating a sudden, deeply personal emergency, life is absolutely full of high stakes friction. So today, we're going to dive right into the behavioral psychology of these moments to uncover what that friction actually reveals about who we really are. So I want you to put yourself in the hot seat for a second. Do your actions under intense stress show the real you, or are we just seeing a panicked, knee-jerk reaction to a shock? Think back to that enterprise tech scenario I just mentioned. If a leader completely freezes up or lashes out at their team when the servers go down during a massive product launch, is that their true character? Or, should we give them a pass because of the sheer terror of that specific moment? Well, this brings us perfectly to a famous Swedish proverb. In calm waters, every ship has a good captain. And it makes sense, right? It's incredibly easy to lead, to be perfectly rational, and to be super kind when the tech works, the client is smiling, and the whole shebang is going exactly to plan. But pressure? Pressure changes the game entirely. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the true colors debate, separating myth from reality. Observers and behavioral psychologists have been arguing about this true colors concept forever. Does staying unusually calm in a crisis mean you have deep virtue? Or, on the flip side, if someone acts recklessly, does that just expose some deep-seated instability? Basically, the debate splits into two main camps. On one side, you've got contextual fatalism. This is the idea that the sheer shock of a changing environment causes the panic, creating a totally different context where only a few lucky personality types happen to thrive. But the other side pushes back hard. They argue for baseline exposure. They say, look, a crisis simply removes the luxury of time. It strips away all your polite, everyday filters and forces your baseline emotional maturity right up to the surface. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that a crisis doesn't magically create a weak foundation. When venture capital suddenly dries up or your flagship product fails spectacularly on stage, the normal social buffers that protect our behavior are just gone. A crisis is an earthquake. It exposes the foundation. The earthquake is just shaking the house, showing us exactly what that house was already built on. Moving on to Section 2, your brain under pressure and the neuroscience of stress. This is where the biology gets wild, because acute stress literally hijacks your brain. It violently shifts activity away from your deliberate prefrontal cortex and sends it straight into your reactive limbic regions. In a low-pressure, everyday environment, your prefrontal cortex handles your comprehensive, deliberate, slow thinking. But when the stakes skyrocket, your brain immediately shifts to the limbic system for pure survival. Your attention dramatically narrows, your decision-making gets way faster, but you're relying entirely on deeply familiar patterns. And honestly, this is exactly why a brilliant engineer might stubbornly try the exact same failed fix over and over again during a massive server outage. Their capacity for complex novel thought has quite literally been bypassed by their own biology. But here's where cognitive reframing becomes a real game changer. This brilliantly illustrates the dichotomy of pressure. Think about it. Do you view a stressful moment as a dangerous threat or a demanding challenge? If you have a threat mindset, your brain registers, oh man, this is dangerous, and you get hit with a flood of anxiety and this overwhelming urge to escape. But if you can reframe that moment, telling yourself, okay, this isn't a threat, this is just a high demand on my skills, you actually generate energy instead of panic. You physically shift your body from a fear response into a highly focused, engaged state. Let's look at how we build that state in Section 3, character, habits, and training, the foundation. How you respond to that biological shift we just talked about is determined entirely by what you've built beforehand. We often think of character as this magical, innate trait you're just born with, but it's really not. Character is truly just the aggregate of your baseline habits and values that kick in automatically when the pressure is on. It's what you do when nobody is watching. It's your internal autopilot taking over when your deliberate brain gets overwhelmed. You don't mysteriously rise to the occasion, you simply default to your character. And by intentionally building these 4 elements every single day, you reinforce your foundation so it actually holds up during that metaphorical earthquake. You have to clearly define your core values, things like honesty and integrity. You have to lock in your beliefs, those deep convictions that shape how you see the world. You need to cultivate constructive thoughts, and of course, practice consistent behaviors. Listen, you absolutely cannot wait for the earthquake to start pouring the concrete for this foundation. You've got to do it in the calm waters, running drills, and defining your culture long before the alarm bells start ringing. I love this quote from a seasoned crisis responder. They hit the nail on the head. What really makes the difference in how people react? Training. The folks who seem to flawlessly handle unimaginable pressure, they aren't just acting on pure natural instinct. No way. They are falling back on rigorous training. In the enterprise world, this looks like conducting serious postmortems and disaster simulations. That way, when the real crisis hits, your brain has a well-worn, familiar framework to rely on, instead of just drowning in the chaos. Think about Captain Sullenberger losing both engines on Flight 1549 over the Hudson. He didn't have time to hesitate, deliberate, or call a committee meeting. He had seconds. He relied purely on disciplined preparation and extreme emotional control to save every single person on that plane. That wasn't luck. That was years of intensive training instantly taking the wheel. He assessed the terrifying reality and committed to a solution without freezing for even a second. So, how do we get there? That's section 4. Mastering the pressure cooker with actionable strategies. Performance psychology teaches us that staying effective under pressure requires building what's known as the three-legged stool of performance. You need a calm body, a confident mind, and a focused spirit. And you need all three to stay upright when the ground starts shaking. If you neglect physical recovery, like say letting late-night doom scrolling completely replace your sleep, well, your body isn't calm, and that like snaps. If you stubbornly stick to a failing plan, your mind isn't confident and adaptive. And if you completely lose sight of your overarching mission, your spirit loses its focus. To truly master this pressure cooker, you have to commit to this journey of lasting leadership. Picture that failed tech proof of concept from earlier. Step 1, accept reality. Just accept that the software crashed. Don't make excuses or waste precious energy wishing it hadn't happened. Step 2, grow from the challenge. Figure out the core engineering lesson buried in the pain of that very public failure. And step 3, serve something larger. Take that newfound resilience, stabilize your panicked team, and use it to serve your clients 10 times better the next time around. And that brings us to our final part, Section 5, Growth Through the Fire, Post-Traumatic Growth. Because here's the secret, we don't really grow in comfort, we grow in friction. And this leads to an incredibly powerful process psychologists call post-traumatic growth, or PTG. Now, unlike PTSD, which we hear about a lot, PTG focuses entirely on the positive psychological change that happens after a major adversity. Your brain actually forms new structural connections simply because it's being pushed to its limits. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean the suffering wasn't real or painful. It means you are actively integrating that suffering to fuel a profound personal evolution. In fact, the research shows that navigating extreme pressure successfully can spark lasting positive changes across 5 core areas of your life. First up, people usually walk away with a much deeper, grounded appreciation for life in general. Second, their interpersonal relationships get way stronger, mostly because they've had to rely on each other in the trenches. Third, they discover entirely new personal strengths, suddenly realizing they're capable of so much more than they thought. Fourth, they often go through a spiritual or existential shift. And finally, they reevaluate what actually matters, completely stripping away superficial life goals for things with real meaning. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, actually captured this perfectly. He said, greatness comes from character, and character isn't formed out of smart people. It's formed out of people who suffered. It's kind of wild, but he actually wishes ample doses of pain and suffering upon future leaders. Why? Because he knows for a fact that friction is the only possible way to forge the resilience you need to do anything meaningful in this world. The pressure is literally what makes the diamond. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this. When your next stressful moment hits, what foundation is it going to reveal? Because like we said at the very beginning, you don't need a year to learn who you or your team members truly are. One stressful moment tells you absolutely everything. The next earthquake is coming, and it's going to show you exactly what's underneath. So use the calm waters you have today to build the character you're desperately going to need tomorrow.